Have you ever noticed that some people suddenly become different? They stop arguing, stop explaining themselves, stop seeking attention, and stop reacting the way they used to. At first, it seems strange. You assume they're angry, upset, or trying to prove a point. But the truth is often much deeper than that. Sometimes, it means they've simply stopped caring. And when it comes to Sigma men, this change can be especially powerful. A Sigma male is known for his independence, emotional control, and ability to stay focused on what truly matters. He doesn't waste energy on unnecessary drama, and he rarely depends on other people for validation. But even Sigma men have limits. They can be loyal, patient, and understanding for a very long time. However, once they realize that their effort isn't appreciated, their respect isn't valued, or their trust has been broken too many times, something changes. The interesting part is that a Sigma rarely announces this change. He doesn't make dramatic speeches. He doesn't post emotional messages online. He doesn't beg for attention. Instead, he quietly disconnects. And most people don't realize what's happening until it's already too late. That's why many people are shocked when a Sigma suddenly walks away from a friendship, relationship, or situation without looking back. They mistake his silence for weakness. They assume he'll return. They believe he'll continue tolerating the same behavior forever. But once a Sigma truly stops caring, the transformation can be impossible to reverse. The person who once gave endless chances suddenly becomes distant. The person who once listened patiently becomes silent. The person who once made an effort simply moves on. And the scary part? Most people never see it coming. In today's video, we're going to explore * 10 signs a Sigma has stopped caring. These signs reveal the subtle but powerful changes that occur when a Sigma reaches his limit and decides to protect his peace instead of chasing people who don't value him. As we go through these signs, pay close attention. You may recognize them in someone you know. You may even recognize them in yourself. And trust me, the final sign is the one that proves a Sigma is truly done. But before we begin, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications for more Sigma mindset, psychology, self-improvement, and personal growth content. Now let's dive into the * 10 signs a Sigma has stopped caring. 10. He stops arguing with you. One of the first signs that a Sigma has stopped caring is that he stops arguing. Many people assume that arguments are always negative, but the truth is that people usually argue when they still care. When someone matters to you, you try to explain your perspective, solve problems, and fix misunderstandings. A Sigma male is no different. If he values a relationship, friendship, or connection, he will make an effort to communicate and work through issues. However, once he realizes that his words are being ignored or that the other person has no intention of understanding him, something changes. He stops trying. At first, this can be confusing. The person who once defended his position suddenly becomes quiet. The person who once wanted solutions now seems uninterested. Many people mistake this silence for weakness or surrender, but it's neither. In reality, it's often a sign that the Sigma has emotionally checked out. He has decided that the conversation is no longer worth his time or energy. A Sigma understands that not every battle deserves to be fought. If someone repeatedly misunderstands him, disrespects him, or refuses to listen, he won't waste his life trying to convince them. Instead, he chooses peace. He lets go of the need to be understood and focuses on moving forward. This is why silence can be one of the strongest signs that a Sigma no longer cares. When he stops arguing, it's often because he has already accepted that the connection is no longer worth saving. 9. He takes longer to respond. Another clear sign that a Sigma has stopped caring is that he begins taking longer to respond. This doesn't mean he's playing games or trying to punish anyone. Sigma men generally dislike manipulation and emotional tactics. The difference is much simpler. His priorities have changed. When a Sigma cares about someone, he naturally makes time for them. He enjoys talking to them, sharing experiences, and maintaining communication. But once his emotional investment fades, communication becomes less important. Many people notice this change but misunderstand it. They assume the Sigma is busy or distracted. Sometimes that's true, but when the pattern becomes consistent, it often signals something deeper. The conversations that once mattered no longer hold the same value. The urgency to reply disappears. The effort slowly fades away. This happens because attention follows interest. When a Sigma is emotionally invested, he pays attention. When he stops caring, his focus shifts elsewhere. He begins dedicating more time to his goals, hobbies, career, and personal growth. Communication that once felt meaningful becomes just another task. The important thing to understand is that a Sigma rarely announces this change. He won't send a message explaining that he cares less. He simply adjusts his actions. Over time, the delays become longer, the conversations become shorter, and the connection grows weaker. It's not always intentional. It's simply the natural result of emotional detachment. When a Sigma takes significantly longer to respond than he used to, it often means you've become less important in his world. 8. He stops explaining himself. One of the most noticeable signs that a Sigma has stopped caring is that he stops explaining himself. When he values a relationship, he is willing to clarify misunderstandings, discuss decisions, and help others understand his perspective. He wants healthy communication because he believes it helps build stronger connections. But once he reaches a point where he feels unheard or unappreciated, he gradually stops making that effort. Many people expect explanations. They want to know why he made a certain choice or why he feels a certain way. A Sigma who cares may provide those answers. A Sigma who has emotionally detached usually won't. He understands that some people have already decided what they want to believe. Explaining himself repeatedly becomes exhausting and pointless. This doesn't mean he's hiding something. It means he no longer feels responsible for convincing others to understand him. He becomes comfortable letting people think whatever they want. Instead of defending every action, he focuses on living according to his values. To many people, this behavior feels cold or distant. In reality, it's often a sign that the Sigma has stopped investing emotionally in the relationship. He no longer feels the need to justify himself because the outcome no longer matters enough. When someone reaches this stage, it becomes very difficult to rebuild the connection. That's why a Sigma's silence can be more powerful than any explanation. It often signals that he has already moved on emotionally, even if he's still physically present. 7. He becomes emotionally distant. When a Sigma stops caring, one of the biggest changes occurs on an emotional level. He becomes distant. The warmth, attention, and emotional energy he once offered begin to disappear. At first, the difference may be subtle. He smiles less, shares less, and participates less in conversations. Over time, the emotional gap becomes impossible to ignore. This happens because emotional investment requires effort. A Sigma is willing to give that effort when he believes the relationship is meaningful. But when trust is broken repeatedly or his efforts are not appreciated, he begins protecting himself. Instead of continuing to give emotionally, he withdraws. Many people notice this change too late. They assume everything is fine because the Sigma isn't complaining. The truth is that Sigma men often process emotions internally. They don't always announce when they're hurt or disappointed. Instead, they quietly reduce their emotional involvement. The dangerous part is that emotional distance often appears long before physical distance. A Sigma may still be around, still talking, and still participating in daily life. But emotionally, he's already halfway out the door. The connection feels different because it is different. Once emotional distance becomes permanent, rebuilding trust can be extremely difficult. That's why this sign is so important. If a Sigma becomes noticeably less engaged, less expressive, and less invested emotionally, it often means he has started the process of letting go. 6. He stops initiating conversations. A Sigma who cares usually makes an effort to stay connected. He checks in, starts conversations, and shows interest in what's happening in someone's life. However, when he stops caring, that effort begins to disappear. One of the clearest signs is that he stops initiating communication. This change often reveals something important about the relationship. Many people don't realize how much effort the Sigma was making until he stops. Suddenly, the conversations disappear. The messages become less frequent. The connection feels one-sided. A Sigma pays attention to patterns. If he notices that he is always the one reaching out, always starting conversations, and always maintaining the connection, he eventually asks himself why. Healthy relationships require mutual effort. If that effort doesn't exist, he slowly pulls back. The interesting thing is that he rarely complains about it. He simply stops, then he watches what happens. If the other person never reaches out, it confirms what he already suspected. The connection mattered more to him than it did to them. This sign is powerful because it reflects emotional reality. When someone is important, people make time for them. When a Sigma stops initiating conversations, it's often because his emotional investment has significantly decreased. The relationship no longer feels worth the energy it once required. 5. He focuses more on himself. One of the healthiest signs that a Sigma has stopped caring is that he redirects his energy toward himself. Instead of worrying about people who don't appreciate him, he invests in personal growth. He focuses on his goals, career, fitness, education, and mental well-being. When emotionally invested, Sigma men often dedicate significant energy to relationships. They try to support others, solve problems, and maintain connections. But once they stop caring, that energy doesn't disappear. It simply changes direction. Many people interpret this shift as selfishness. In reality, it's often self-respect. The Sigma realizes that investing in himself provides greater returns than investing in people who take him for granted. This is why many Sigma men become more successful after emotional detachment. The time and energy once spent on draining relationships become available for growth. New opportunities appear because their focus becomes sharper. The more detached he becomes, the more attention he gives to building a better future. He reads more, learns more, trains harder, and works smarter. Instead of dwelling on disappointment, he channels his energy into progress. That's why seeing a Sigma suddenly become highly focused on self-improvement can be a major sign that he has stopped caring about a particular relationship or situation. 4. He no longer gets jealous. When a Sigma truly stops caring, jealousy disappears. Jealousy usually comes from emotional investment. People become jealous when they fear losing something they value. Once that emotional attachment is gone, so is the jealousy. Many people expect reactions. They expect the Sigma to care about who they're spending time with or what they're doing. But when he stops caring, those things lose their importance. He no longer monitors, questions, or worries about situations that once affected him emotionally. This doesn't happen because he suddenly becomes emotionless. It happens because his focus has shifted away from the relationship entirely. The emotional connection that created concern is no longer there. For many people, this is one of the most shocking signs. They mistake his lack of jealousy for confidence or patience. Sometimes it's actually indifference. The Sigma simply no longer feels invested enough to care. This emotional freedom allows him to focus on his own life instead of constantly monitoring someone else's. And once a Sigma reaches this stage, it often means his emotional detachment is becoming permanent. 3. He stops giving second chances. Sigma men are often patient, but they are not endlessly patient. When they care about someone, they are willing to forgive mistakes and offer second chances. However, once they stop caring, those chances disappear. The reason is simple. A Sigma views trust as valuable. Every broken promise, repeated lie, and act of disrespect damages that trust. Eventually, a point is reached where rebuilding no longer feels worthwhile. When that happens, the Sigma stops negotiating. He stops hoping people will change. He stops making excuses for behavior that hurts him. Instead, he accepts reality and moves on. Many people become surprised when a Sigma finally reaches his limit. They assume he will always forgive because he has forgiven so much in the past. What they don't realize is that every act of patience has a limit. Once a Sigma stops offering second chances, it's often because he has already decided that the relationship no longer deserves his effort. 2. He becomes completely unbothered. One of the strongest signs that a Sigma has stopped caring is that he becomes completely unbothered. Things that once upset him no longer trigger any reaction. Criticism, drama, and emotional games lose their power. At first, this can seem strange. People who expect emotional reactions become frustrated when they don't get them. They try harder to provoke a response, but nothing changes. The reason is simple: emotional detachment. The Sigma no longer feels emotionally invested enough to react. He understands that protecting his peace is more valuable than winning arguments or proving points. This calmness often gets mistaken for strength, and in many cases it is. But it can also be a sign that he has emotionally moved on. The situation no longer matters enough to affect him. When a Sigma becomes completely unbothered, it's usually because he has accepted reality and stopped fighting it. 1. He walks away without looking back. The ultimate sign that a Sigma has stopped caring is that he walks away. No dramatic speeches, no emotional scenes, no desperate attempts to be understood. He simply leaves. This surprises many people because they expect warnings, they expect arguments, they expect another chance. But Sigma men often make their decision quietly. By the time they walk away physically, they have usually been emotionally detached for a long time. Walking away doesn't mean the Sigma never cared. In fact, it often means he cared deeply. The difference is that he has finally accepted that staying is causing more harm than leaving. Once a Sigma reaches this point, he rarely looks back. His focus shifts entirely toward the future. He invests his energy in growth, peace, and new opportunities. That's why this is the strongest sign of all. When a Sigma walks away without looking back, it means he has truly stopped caring. And by then, the decision is usually final. At the end of the day, a Sigma doesn't stop caring overnight. It usually happens after repeated disappointment, broken trust, and countless chances that were never appreciated. While most people assume a Sigma is cold or emotionless, the truth is often the opposite. Sigma men care deeply, but only for people and situations they believe are worth their time, energy, and loyalty. The difference is that once a Sigma realizes his effort is no longer valued, he doesn't beg, chase, or create drama. He simply pulls back. He protects his peace, focuses on his growth, and moves forward. That's why many people don't realize they've lost a Sigma until it's already too late. Remember, silence isn't always weakness. Sometimes it's the strongest message a person can send. And when a Sigma becomes quiet, distant, and completely unbothered, it may be because he has finally accepted that some things are no longer worth fighting for. Now I want to ask you something. Which of these 10 signs do you think is the strongest sign that a Sigma has stopped caring? Was it 10, he stops arguing? 5, he focuses more on himself? Or 1, he walks away without looking back? Let me know your answer in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more Sigma mindset, psychology, and self-improvement content. Asterisk remember, when a sigma stops caring, he doesn't make noise, he simply moves on.